look at here. See, we'll see the some intro part of the Spring and advantage, overview, features, and there are some prerequisites we need for that. Characteristics. What are the characteristics of a Spring and what is the dependency injection? So dependency injection is nothing. It is just IOC only. So IOC also be called dependency injection. Okay. And there is the aspect oriented programming, AOP. I'll explain in details. So let us see all these details in Spring. As I said, Spring is open source framework and free to use. So it has created to address the complexity of enterprise application development. As I said, there's a huge complexity in development with enterprise Java beans. Like as I said, there's a number of callback methods. There's a home interface, remote interface, lot of things we have to do. And if we talk about the struts are used only for web application, whereas Spring can be used for developing a standalone uh, applet, web application, enterprise application for all. So it also helps us to create a small application. It also helps us to create a large application or more scalable applications, right? String is a lightweight framework, so it's take very small space like 1 MB or 2 MB in developing a basic applications. Spring is having total 6 models. I'll explain each and every model. Main core of a Spring is IOC model, as I said. This framework provides rich functionality for building web applications that are highly configurable. You can configure with the Hibernate. You can configure the IBTs and all. This can easily interact with other framework like Struts, JSF, and WebWork. So advantage. The advantage of a Springs are as follows. As I said, it is a layered architecture. Okay. Use what you need and leave you don't need now. So it's very like decoupled format. Spring enables POSO programming. There is no behind the scene magic here. So POSO programming enables continuous integration and testability. Dependency injection and inversion control simplifies JDBC. So we'll see these features: dependency injection and inversion of control, and it is open source. Now you can see clearly this 6 module is here: DAO, ORM, J2E, and Web, AOP, and Core. So this is the core container of Spring, which is IOC container, which is uses two API, two interfaces. One is the bean factory, right? Bean factory, and second is the application context, right? These are the two interfaces which help us to create object to the core container or IOC container of the Spring. We have a DAO facility here, data access object. So Spring JDBC transaction management, all these things are there. You can integrate your application, Spring based application, with ORM like Hibernate, JPA, all these ORM tool is there. Okay, and I mean it is having a Z2 integration support. You can integrate with your web application, like application having a struts, a web work. So there's a huge facility. Even if we want to render some view and part, we're having JSP support, velocity support. Okay, there's a number of things we are having here that we'll see. And there's a one concept, there's a separate programming concept here, that is AOP, aspect oriented programming, where in generally, like what are the technology we are having there, we are never we never talk about the concerns and aspect. Whenever we need, we call it, right? So aspect means what? It is a concern here, like transactions, login. Okay, all these things we can take care with a Spring here. Okay, in the AOP. I'll show you what are the ways to write aspect-oriented programming. Like in OOPS, just compare here. We are having a concept of OOPS, right? Where we always talk about the object and class, right? Object and class. Here we talk about the aspect. Here we talk about the concern. What is a concern and aspect? Like I just give one or two example, like transactions. I want a transaction support. I want a logging support. Okay. So there are several aspect and concerns we are having which will take care in the AOP programming. Okay. So these are the 6 module. You just will little explore this module now here. The core package, as I said, is the most fundamental part of the framework and provides the IOC and dependency injection features. The basic concept here is the bin factory, which provides a sophisticated implementation of the factory pattern, which removes the need for programmatic singleton and allows you to decouple the configuration and specification of dependencies from your actual programming logic. Okay, so that's the core container of. Next is the context package. So these are the packages which we are having in the Spring. Okay, now the context package built on the solid base provided by the core package. It provides a way to access object in a framework style manner in a fashion somewhat reminiscent of a Zendia registry. Okay, a DAO package provides a JDBC abstraction layer that removes the need to do tedious JDBC coding and parsing of database vendor specific error codes. So we are coming out of that problem like writing JDBC code. So we have a DAO package which help us to communicate with the database. Okay, the ORM package provides integration layer for popular object relation mapping, ORM mapping, like we are having Hibernate, iBuddies, right, ZDO and JPA. So we can easily integrate this ORM tools with our Spring application. Okay, now Spring AOP package provides an AOP Alliance compliant aspect oriented programming. So this is what aspect, sorry, so this is what aspect oriented programming, right? Implementation allowing to define, like for example, method interceptors and point cuts to cleanly decouple code, implementing functionality that should logically speaking be separated. So you'll see once we write some code regarding this. Web package provides basic web oriented integration features such as multi-part file upload functionality, right? Initialization of the IOC container using sublet listener and web oriented application context. Spring MVC package provides a model view controller implementation for web application. Let us say we want to write some web application which will have a MVC design pattern. So that design pattern I can implement through the Spring MVC package and we can write a good web application. So it provides a clean separation between domain model code and waveform and allows you to use all the other features of the Spring framework. So we understood the modules which we have in a Spring, right? Like we have seen IOC, AOP, and DAO, and we can say ORM and J2 and BABE or MBC module, right? Next, we have to understand the features of Spring. So we can say here, first is the lightweight. So Spring is lightweight when it comes to size and transparency. The basic version of a Spring framework is around 1 MB. And the processing overhead is also negligible. Okay. Next, we have to talk about the inversion of control. I just said that if you are using, or this guy provides the loose coupling, the objects give their dependencies instead of creating or looking for dependent object, right? So we are not creating, okay, we are not looking the dependent object, right? Instead of that, we are getting all the dependencies whatever we are having, and that we call dependency injection, right? So if we talk about IOC, it is called inversion of control. Also we call dependency injection, okay? So both are same now. Aspect oriented. Spring support aspect oriented programming and enables cohesive development by separating application business logic from system services, okay? A container, Spring contains and manages the life cycle and configuration of application project, okay? MVC framework, I just explained to you, we can make application with having with MVC design pattern, right? And there's a different technologies supported by the for view purpose like JSP, velocity, tiles. All these things are which help us to render the views and help us to make a view. Transaction management. Spring framework provides a generic abstraction layer for transaction management. This allowing the developer to add the pluggable transaction manager and making it easy to demarcate transactions without dealing with low level issues, right? So it is having lot of transaction management for different vendors that we can plug in with our code, with our Spring application, and that will function, right? JDBC exception handling. So if we work with JDBC, lot of exceptions we have to take care, but here there's a huge number of exceptions hierarchy we are having that will take care by the Spring, okay? So JDBC abstraction layer of the Spring offers a meaningful exception hierarchy which simplifies the error handling strategy. So integration with Hibernate, JDU, IBTs, Spring provides best integration services with Hibernate and all, okay? If you want to work with Spring, it's not like it's lot of things you require or some installation you require in your system. If you're having Java 5, it's good, okay? For web application and all, you need a Tomcat. This if you want to deploy or build some application through Ant, then you need this Ant, or Eclipse 3.3 or further version you can use for easy development of Spring based application or rapidly development of the Spring based application, but not necessary. Without this I can write a program, but we need to set some jar file in a path and we can use it. Characteristics. Spring characteristics are what? Supports overriding, binding, validations. It is a seamless interaction with different type of view. Testing done by inversion of control, okay? A lot of XML code we are having in our Spring based application. A lot of JSP codes. No common parent controller here we are having. Can be used for small application to large application, okay? Next, let us understand more about dependency injection or inversion of control or IOC. So how tight coupling causes problem when we want to move our application logic from one environment to another. But there's a special case of this issue that makes IOC advantage. This is dramatically apparent. This is a problem of unit testing, right? So if something is very tight coupled, it's very tough for the unit testing, right? Writing unit test is an art in itself. The well-written tests concentrate on single component of the system and tests all of its behavior as thoroughly as possible. However, when a class is tightly coupled to other parts of the application, testing that class's isolations becomes impossible, right? So it is a base model for entire Spring framework. So it is on the base. You have seen that module architecture. That's the core container of Spring framework. In general, object is controlled by Java program. Otherwise, we can store the state of the object using serialization or externalizable interface or externalization, right? So IOC container will create new operator and returns to Java program. If we are using IOC, then object state can be controlled from the external file. So we are not creating object and we are not calling the dependent object for that. So in turn IOC will do that job. So IOC is also called dependency injection. Framework creates Java object calling setter and getter methods, and Java object is controlled by using this. So we can inject our dependent object through getter methods or through constructor. There's a two ways we are having here, and there is a third way also, that is a method, or I can say inject by method, but it is not supported by Spring. It is supported by Avalon framework. So basically IOC is used for configuration process. When needed to change, go to XML file and modify. So it maintains a singleton object. We can go for another object also. In that case we have to do prototype. Okay. By default it supports singleton. Aspect oriented programming. So as I said, aspect means concern, like transaction, logging kind of things. Aspect-oriented programming describe an approach to a set of problems that do not fit naturally into the object-oriented programming approach to problem solving. AOP is not particularly new, but in the Java world, it is only with the introduction of tools such as AspectJ and Spring AOP that it has gained a mainstream audience here. So there's the two things we are having, either this or this, okay? Unfortunately, AOP introduces its own terminology, which Spring AOP has adopted for the sake of consistency with the existing tool. The concepts are remarkably simple, however, even when the underlying implementation is complex. Okay. So the use of an AOP framework allows a solution to problem to be applied before and after the invocation of various externally five methods called. So this guy will help you to look at here. If I'm something doing and I want that before this work this should happen, or after this work this should happen, right? So in that case we do our or be own, but here AOP will help you to get this ready. Okay, so this is a gross approximation to the depth of AOP. So we'll see the details in the later session. So almost all Spring developers will want to take advantage of existing AOP libraries in a Spring to apply to their own applications. Okay, we'll see how it works in a Spring.